our third edition of Startup Cities Live. I'm Jean Hansen from IP City. We are here with Eric Mick, researcher on IP City, Kim, founder of On-Chain City, and today we have a special guest, Lonis. Lonis Hamaili is the current VP of Growth at Prospera City. He has an amazing track record in tech, building the work, a decentralized task managing platform, and Godot Mode, an AI agent platform. So welcome, Lonis.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's jump right in. Can you tell us a bit of your story and how you got involved with Prospera?
Yeah, for sure. So but my background is very different from what we're doing now at Prospera. I would say I'm from tech and startup world. So I spent a few weeks in college in Sweden, and and after dropping out, started this AI company doing AI e-commerce. Quite boring stuff, doing AI optimization, and we grew the company quite well. Though we reached around 25 employees, and the company is still going on in Stockholm. But after some time, both me and my co-founder, we felt that it wasn't really that fulfilling to work on e-commerce, let's say. And so we decided to bring in an external CEO to run the day-to-day stuff. And then my co-founder Anton, he went on to found the Lovable, the AI tool. And then I kind of explored it more broadly. I started doing D work with another friend, which became the biggest freelancer platform for DAOs. We ended up raising from Paradigm, but I had a small acquisition of the company, and then a year ago I was actually about to move to the Bay Area to start a new AI company doing like AI agents. And just a few weeks before I was moving, I read about Prospera for the first time, and it immediately clicked because I always been interested in figuring out how do we improve the layer 0, right? The governmental layer, which I felt was the major bottleneck in Sweden, in the US, and elsewhere. And so I thought, okay, if I'm moving from Sweden to San Francisco, I could just as well, stay on the island for a few weeks to check it out on my way. And so I came here and then read more about how it worked, and it really aligned with me. So I ended up resigning my US visa I just had gotten, and leaving my company, and then moving here almost exactly a year ago now to lead growth.
Nice. And can you give it a short intro to Prospera and what's the problem it's trying to solve?
Yeah, so with Prospera, we're inventing a new industry we call governance as a service. Right, so basically we're partnering with host countries to provide the service that the governments typically provide, right? But instead we provide it as a company within our zones. So that means the rules themselves, the laws and regulations, the justice system, the security, all of that is kind of provided by Prospera, right, within our zones. And we are live with our first hub on the island of Roatan, also Honduras, where we have this full stack, legal autonomy. And still early days. We broke ground in 2020, but we kind of hit somewhat of an inflection point recently. We went from less than 100 people living here to more than 200 people living here in around a year, and we just crossed 350 companies incorporated here. And so but still lots of way to go.
I actually saw the talk at Network State School, Governance as a Service. How do you convince a government to essentially delegate that governance function and give you autonomy? Because you're essentially going in and saying, "Hey, let's do your job for you." How does
Sure.
one do that?
No, it's a very good question. I think there are a few things. So one is that governments, they are the main thing they're looking for people is well-paying jobs, right? That's one of the core functions of government. And in many places in the world, they're kind of falling short of this, right? So in Honduras, there's more than 50% poverty rate and more than 50% unemployment rate. And a big reason for this is that if you try to do business in Honduras, in its current system, it's very hard. It's very hard to invest at all in a company. It's very hard to hire and fire. It's very hard to trust the justice system, right? And so, however, if you bring in its own a governance system like Prospera's into Honduras, you can leapfrog massively and become one of the world's most competitive and business-friendly jurisdictions whilst being within the country of Honduras, right? So we've been here for a few years. We generated more than 3,000 jobs that are at least 25% higher in wages than the national average. And we also have a revenue share, right? Because our business model is taxes, right? We charge a tax to the people living here, 5% personal income tax, and 1% business tax, and 2.5% sales tax. And 12% of those taxes goes directly to the Honduran government, right? So even though they don't have a service obligation within the zone, they don't provide any infrastructure, any security, any healthcare, all of that is within Prospera, right? But still they have the 12% profit share, really. And so those are two major incentives. And then the third one also for Honduras in particular is that they have a massive emigration problem, right? Every year, tens of thousands of the most promising Honduras really are kind of forced to leave to the US, which is a very kind of which is not a great thing. So with Prospera, they can kind of have a chance to make it within their country of birth, which everyone would appreciate.
So it's like you create like I guess like a special economic zone of some sort in the physical jurisdiction, and you become the operator of that zone, like the government operator. Okay, got it.
The governance operator, yeah, correct. But it's a kind of a public-private partnership model, right? So we are, providing the governance services in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's very new for the governance system, but the fundamental of the idea is quite similar of organization, because if you think about like a large organization, they don't have the capacity to innovate because organizational immune system, all of the innovation paradox that people know of, because it's very hard to like move the ship in other direction. So what a corporation does is or create like giving power to the edges, something like create like a small team to innovate that is independent from the core, or they buy startups. So I think for a government, it's kind of the same thing. They won't be able to innovate. Then they created these hubs of autonomy, and they leave the market or some company or a third party institution to manage and bring innovation and talent and so on. So I think that's a pretty good win-win-win strategy for governance. And I think people would love to hear more about how the process, because you've been doing this for 10 years. Can you walk us through the idea to the point that we are now? Like what were the stages of reaching that level?
Yeah, no, for sure. I should say I've been here for a bit more over a year now. But as you say, like the project has been going on for like a decade at this point. And at some point it starts with scouting different jurisdictions, getting LOIs, MOUs about this kind of about getting the legislation needed, right? And once you have the legislation passed, which is by far the hardest part in Honduras, it's the legislation, right? You still need to do a mass amount of building. So the legislation in Honduras passed in 2013, but we didn't break ground until 2020, right? Because once the legislation passed, you still need to figure out the details. You need to build your own charter, your own laws and regulations, master plan, bring in investments to be able to, bootstrap the city. And so, that was a very long process. And then we broke ground in 2020. And I think we're now kind of somewhat close to go from 0 to 1, but I wouldn't say we've gone from 0 to 1 yet, right? We're not yet at the critical mass stage or city stage. But I think we have a good chance of getting there, maybe in the coming 6 to 12 months. And having like 500 to 1,000 people, living here, that I think would have enough mass that it's not boring. It's never boring because there's always some interesting person around, and there's enough people to sustain enough restaurants and enough, amenities that people expect. Obviously, the island is already decently large. It's 100,000 people, but if we could provide most of the amenities people expect within the zone, that would be a major unlock. And
what is that
yeah, I think
relationship? Sorry, you were saying there's like 100,000 people just outside of it, and then there's about 1,000 people. What is the relationship with like folks in Prospera and then outside of it?
yeah, so there's not 1,000 people within the zone yet. I think when I joined, we were maybe 100 people. Now we're maybe 200 people, something like that. So it's going fast, but from a low baseline. And the relationship between, I mean, I've been here for a year. I've never had a bad interaction. I know Niklas and Infinita, he's been here for 3 years. He's never had a bad interaction. Generally, the people on the island like Prospera a lot because they see the effects of it. They see the jobs, the investments, opportunities, and all that. In the mainland of Honduras, it's a bit different because they don't see the actual benefits. They only hear about the threats or the risks in media, right? So they have a very different perception. But on the island, generally, I have never had a bad interaction.
And like just oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just like thinking about it from a user retention standpoint. How do you convert someone who comes to visit there for a few days, few weeks? Like, what is typically the thing that converts them into being a long-term citizen? Change your whole life, come move to Prospera. What is that thing generally?
Yeah, well, I think there are, depending on who you are, different things kind of align to you. A big one is just like being very aligned with the mission of it, like seeing the value that will accrue. So kind of taking a bet almost and saying, okay, in a year this will be the best place in the world to live, because I believe in the fundamentals of the governance framework. I believe in the vision, and so that's why I'm coming now and kind of will be an early adopter essentially. That's a few people. Other people really like the community, just like a bunch of nerds and frontier people, kind of living in a tower. It's kind of, many people kind of appreciate the community that brings. Some people who are working in biotech, especially, but also crypto and other industries that are traditionally quite regulated. They can do things here that they can't do elsewhere, right? And that's a very big unlock for them, just from a business perspective. And so yeah, I would say there's a combination, and yeah, but I would say there are many people coming here. There's a big gap between people wanting to visit and people wanting to move, right? And the island as a whole is a tourist island, right? It has 100,000 people, but it has 1 million visitors per year, tourists. So, but yeah, what we're focusing on is having long-term residents.
So there's no one farming. Like I know when people go to these places to farm tokens, no one's coming there to farm Prospera tokens at any point in time.
We don't have any yet, I guess, but maybe at some point.
There you go.
Well, you mentioned that the process of Prospera is like getting to 0 for 1. You're getting closer to have like mass adoption at some point. But as a startup, it's a startup city, so you have some hypotheses of. So one thing is having the autonomy, but the governance platforms needs to work. So you have Prospera brought some ideas, new ideas, and one of the ideas is the regulatory model, which is unique in the world, and this is working. So I think this is a product that I think has this product market fit, because for companies in the frontier, in over-regulated industry, they are coming and they are incorporating. So can you explain how the regulatory system works and what's the benefit and why these companies are coming to Prospera?
Sure.
And which type it? Can you give him some examples of companies that are there?
Yeah. So for most companies, most people, if you're doing software company or consultancy or whatever it is, quote unquote normal company, you can just come to Prospera, create a company in 24 hours, and then get started, right? However, so that's the typical common class of companies. But then there are this class of companies that are in regulated industries, right? And these are industries that can have some risk to third parties, right? So, obviously, healthcare, finance, construction, energy, mining, stuff like that. And those are like regulated, right? And so how you typically regulate them in other jurisdictions is that you go to a monopoly central authority that has to give you approval, right? So it's either there's the FDA or the SEC or the FTC or the NRC, depending on what you're doing. And typically what this leads to, because they are kind of monopoly agencies, like I used to say in the EIRNA, it leads to very long waiting times and very high costs, even for when things should be approved much faster. And so our position is, anyone who's been in crypto saw like what happened with SEC, in the last 5 years. They just go, when they have this monopoly power, they can just go crazy, really. And what our paradigm of regulation is very different. So in our paradigm, you have your business and your regulation of choice. You can actually choose the regulatory framework that suits your business best, whether that's French law, German law, Delaware law, or you can propose your own optimal regulation, right? And then you can propose that to the council, and if it's approved, you have a new regulatory environment. However, before you can start to operate, you need to go to a market of insurance companies, and you need to get an insurance liability policy before you can commercialize, right? So in effect, the insurance companies become the regulators, because they will look at your business and your regulation of choice and say, is this safe enough for us to underwrite and give a policy to, right? And so the insurance companies have much better incentive to price risk effectively for two reasons. One is that there's competition. There's several different insurance companies. And secondly, the insurance companies, they kind of get both of the downside and upside, right? If something goes wrong, they have to pay up, and they really don't want to pay up. So they will not give out policies to bad projects. Right? However, they also return us the upside. Like, let's say there's a drug that is life-saving to people, and they see it's low risk, they approve it. Then they have a financial stake in that, right? Because they can get the insurance premiums every year from the company. Whether it's $100, $1,000, $10,000, and they get the financial incentive. Whereas in the case of the FDA, they don't really have that incentive. And so, that's basically the model. And there are a few dozen companies that went through this process successfully. One of them is Unlimited Bio, who is a group of scientists from Eastern Europe. They basically found that this molecule that was used to treat limb disease in Eastern Europe actually had very interesting implications for longevity. People seem to live longer and better with this molecule. And it had been used for many decades there, completely safe. And so they wanted to go to market with this in the US as a longevity drug, right? However, they found out that actually the US doesn't recognize any data outside, and they would have to start from scratch. It would cost them $500 million and take more than a decade, right? So basically, they were ready to give up at that point. But then instead, they found out Prospera, where you could come here. They could go to market in a few months at a small fraction of the cost, going through the regulatory process. And they've been live now for a bit. They have their first customers here. And around a month ago, even the Kardashians kind of signed up as early customers. So yeah, that's kind of one example.
So just a follow-up question on the regulatory system. This idea was like some academic theory that you just applied in real life, or who came up with this idea? Do you know?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's been kind of this philosophical idea for a long time in the free market community, right? Just like this notion that insurance companies, they price risk very effectively. They understand and care about the tail risks in an appropriate way. And but it hadn't been implemented, as you say. So I guess we're I think the first one implementing it in that way.
Have you guys had any like there's been, I guess, all these companies set up. How does dispute resolution works? And have you had any experience where it got to that state where you had to get like your courts and stuff involved? And what did that sort of look like?
Yes, we have our system relies on private arbitration, which is basically private courts, right? So typical what we see public courts, whether it's the US or Europe or elsewhere, they don't have an incentive to improve because it's not private, and so it becomes very costly and takes a lot of time. So in Prospera, we have this private arbitration center. The first one is the Prospera Arbitration Center, PAC. And there you can typically, get the hearing within a month. You can get a decision within 2 months. It's very affordable to go after someone that has wronged you. And we had a few disputes there, and they work out quite quickly and efficiently. I guess I could give you one example. There was, a few months ago, there was someone who was using one of the golf carts here, trying it out, and they kind of, I think there was maybe something wrong with the golf cart. I'm not 100% sure, but also the person kind of went down the hill, and kind of the golf cart kind of, broke down somehow, and so they kind of hurt their shoulder, their shoulder a little bit. Nothing serious, but still marks. And so they went after this. The owner of the golf cart was actually Prospera Hospitality Unit. So they went after the hospitality unit in our arbitration center, and they won, I think, a 40K price for that.
Oh wow!
And it's quite quick to do, easy to do, and it really levels the playing field much more between people and corporations.
Yeah, can you explain what is the incentive of a private court versus a public court, and why they're able to move so fast? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, so because there's competition and there's profit incentive, right? So when you do business, right, you can choose you have a choice of venue, right? And so you can choose, okay, if you and me we have a deal, then we will think, okay, where do we go to get effective and affordable and fair dispute resolution in the case of a dispute, right? And so if there are several options that are private, then they will compete for being as fair, as affordable, and as quick as possible, right? Whereas if there's just a public court system, there's no incentive to improve. You always go to the court system if something happens, and that's it. Whereas here, every time there's a contract, you have a choice of venue, and you and me, counterparts, will only agree on a fair option, right? Because we know that if we go to court, we want to make sure that they are neutral. And so it's really just the typical, market process, but applied to the justice space as well.
Yeah, I guess like when you have that contract and you put what is the jurisdiction of arbitration. In this, you just put who's your private court. You just define.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
And I think someone could hear this and think in coordination theory or governance theory, there's this idea of if you have a small community, some rules or mechanism can work, but if you scale 1 or 2 orders of magnitudes, everything changes. How do you think about that in the process of scaling? So it's okay. You have 100 people. It's easy to be efficient because there's no demand. But you have 100 millions or 10 in the level of 100 of millions. Maybe this idea can break. So how do you think in the scale and how to deliver the system?
I think it's the reverse, right? With any market, it becomes more efficient the more market participants there is, right? It's typically in the early stages that it's less efficient, right? If you look at the smartphone market now, it's much more efficient now than it was when it started out. And having just one player is the root of the efficiency, right? Now we don't have much competition yet. We only have the profit incentive, which is still a massive contributor to improvement. But once we have several options, that will be a much greater, force for improvement. So I expect the reverse to happen.
Cool. I'm curious about the challenge that you are facing. So, even not only political challenges, you can talk a bit about that, but the market, how to raise money, how to find talents, this kind of more operational and things, and of course growth. That is your realm.
Yeah. Well, so well, our challenges. Well, we're looking to reach critical mass, and so we need. And there are many layers to that, right? We need, on the top level, we need high level awareness, but I think we're doing quite well in awareness. Many people know about Prospera, but then the layer below that is like understanding, which I think we're doing quite poorly of. Very few people understand or could articulate Prospera to any degree. So I think we have a lot of work to do there. But once you have the understanding, typically people might come and want to visit. So we have events here, right? And I think we'll have events. We have like 5 events already planned that you can see on our website, and we're planning to add more, hopefully with EP City as well here. And then a stage after that is once people visit, that's when they can commit to moving. But then we have a real estate bottleneck that we foresee. We don't have it currently, but we will foresee it being there in 3 to 6 months. And so that means that we have to be ahead of the curve and figure out, okay, how do we get more real estate developers and real estate investors to come here and build out more housing. And so there's kind of the full funnel of it. And I think what we're doing a lot of now is just solving a lot of experience, like quality of life improvements on the ground, having more events here, try to have more educational content so people go from awareness to understanding. And I think that's a big part of it.
How easy is it to get a visa, like a residency visa, to get set up?
Well, it depends a bit on your passport. So if you're Northern American or European passport holder, then you can come to Honduras without the visa. You can stay for 90 days, and if you leave at some point and come back, you get another 90 days. So they're a very, very friendly system. And then obviously at some point you want to apply for residency, but once you file your application, which mainly requires setting up a bank account, putting some money in it, and once you file for your residency, you can stay in the country as long as you want while it's processing. And so it's processing for like 8 months, but you can stay in the country, you can leave and come back. So they have a very good immigration system, I would say, to some degree, because they don't have an immigration problem at all. I mean, all the immigrants are coming are massively contributing, and they have an immigration problem, sadly, where people are leaving. And so, yeah.
Do they have anything where you can, kind of like how Antigua and these other countries do, where you can like opt for a citizenship and a new passport? Is that something they're thinking about, or not at all?
I don't think they currently have that program, but it could be something that they would create. Maybe after the election in November, something like that could be relevant.
I think it'd be good to probably get some. I think there was some issues. I'm like very out of the loop when it comes to like what was happening on the case side, and I think a lot has been resolved now with Prospera and the local government. It would be good for you to shed some light on that and where you guys are at with that whole situation.
Sure. Well, so basically the current administration in Honduras are quite anti-business, and as a result also anti-Prospera, right? And so it's been their explicit position for like 4 years now that they don't want Prospera here, essentially. And so they came into power 3.5 years ago, on the promise of getting rid of Prospera, and getting rid of the SEDES, the underlying legislation, right? And when they came in, we were less than 20 companies here, and now 4 years later, 3.5 years later, we have more than 350 companies, right? So they haven't been able to kill us. They have been able to slow us down for sure by all of the FUD. But the reason they haven't been able to stop us is that we're protected by international treaties, right? So we have a legal stability agreement with Honduras that is kind of enriched in the US-Honduras trade treaty via CAFTA-DR, the UK-Honduras trade treaty, even the Kuwait-Honduras trade treaty. And these treaties are very durable and they don't tend to change. And they can't really be changed in this case either because of the stability period over 50 years. And so it's mostly barking and no biting, though the barking is very damaging. Like it's massively slowed us down. But they can't bite really. And so I guess that's the situation. There is an election in November coming up, where the current administration is doing very poorly in the polls, at least. And the two opposition parties are both centrists and very reasonable, and we expect to, be able to have a good conversation with them.
And then how do you guys think about like I don't know. Do they have an army of some sort? Some sort, like, can they exercise like physical force? Can they come into the territory? And like, how do you guys think about armies, if at all?
Yeah, well, so basically, because we are part of these international treaties, we are able to go after to the extent that they would break the agreement, we can go after them in international courts, right? And so we've already started a process, right, where we go after them in international courts. The thing with international courts, exit in this case, is that it's binding arbitration, which means that if you get an award of X billion, you basically have to pay it up, because all the countries that are part of this international court would, if not paid up, they can freeze your bank accounts, they can take your planes. And this happens all the time. Pakistan paid out several $1 billion last year to a company in some case, and it's all of these are public cases on the Exit website. So again, there's a strong financial incentive to not escalate in that way. Number one, and then number two, also we're on an island and not on the mainland, right? And the island is a tourist island. It has 1 million visitors per year, and it's a massive driver of revenue for Honduras. And if they would do any form of escalation on the island, it would massively impact the tourism industry, which is very unpopular amongst everyone, including their own voters. And so there are two strong reasons. I mean, you can never say never, but there's two strong reasons for why we haven't seen it so far and why we don't expect to see it either.
It's kind of like applying game theory at like a city setup. It's at every level. It's like optimized for the most optimal outcome.
Sure.
And it seems like you are like putting the energy to grow the first node, like I imagine 90% or more, but you already are having conversation with other other countries. And can you share a bit of the potential other nodes that we are going to see over the next years?
Sure. Well, we're
And
talking
also if it's going to be the exactly same platform, is like just another territory, or are you planning to have some different levels of autonomy to be more easy to grow horizontally?
Yeah. Well, yeah, so we're talking to a few different governments in Eastern Africa and different parts of Latin America. And, the goal is to create some form of modern Hanseatic League, right? Where you have these zones that are, all around the world that have this shared jurisdictional layer. And, the Prospera platform really requires to have a certain depth of legal autonomy for it to work, really. And so, obviously there can always be details changed, and that's fine. But the bulk of the platform would be the same. And you would use, we envision that you would use the same e-governance platform that you're currently using on eprospera.com. You would use that to start and create and run businesses across the different jurisdictions.
And can you paint a picture of like 10 years from now, everything went well, Prospera is successful? How does look like the idea of having like multiple nodes for a resident's point of view? So you're going to have like the Prospera residency. You can go visit other places. It's going to be like, can you paint a picture of what success looks like?
Yeah, well, the first order of success is reaching critical mass here on our first hub in Roatan. And that means having thousands of people living here, supporting tens of thousands of jobs locally, and really having at least a handful of companies that are highly successful here that could not be done elsewhere. Right? That would be one example of success in our first hub, and that will greatly increase ours and everyone else's chances of getting these hubs in other parts of the world as well. Because if we all as a movement can point to, look, we made it happen. Here we created tens of thousands of jobs. Let's have the model in your country as well. It's a much stronger argument. So that's really what we're focusing on by far now. And I'm saying this because I see a lot of focus in the movement on like going from 1 to n. And going from 1 to n is fine, but I think we should focus on going from 0 to 1 first. And so that's 99% of our focus, going from 0 to 1. And but then, yeah, in terms of scaling, yes, we would have these zones all across the world where you can, have your Prospera residency, so you could You could enter a zone that way. You could do business interchangeably. You would have probably a very shared community of like-minded people as well. And so that's kind of how we see it.
And I think one maybe it's a different point from like these legacy cities or these current cities is that Prospera is this like legal layer with autonomy, with like the foundation of a good governance, and we are seeing some communities like leveraging that legislation, that governance platforms should create more vertical solutions. So, for example, we have Infinita leveraging Prospera's governance to biotech, so to accelerate the launch of new therapies as a FDA parallel system. So, which other communities, vertical communities, you are seeing to emerge in this space within Prospera?
Yeah, no, as you say, we have this mental model of like layer 0 being the host country, right? They have the constitution and what have you, and then the layer 1 is Prospera to some extent. We have the governance platform, and it's like the Hong Kong and China, right? So Hong Kong is part of China, but it has its own completely separate model, really. But then on top of Prospera and Hong Kong, there can be like community, there can be a Y Combinator, or there can be communities, and Finta is the first one, very successful one, as you say, focusing on biotech and also some crypto elements. And they will be having a big tournament here in February and March next year. And then we all have also the Bitcoin district in Prospera that's being built out. They have events in November and January focused on Bitcoiners, and they hope to create like a Bitcoin beach equivalent from El Salvador, but in Prospera. We have a few digital nomad groups here as well. Currently, we have a Solana hackathon by Venture Launch being run. And so, yeah, we have these different communities that kind of leveraging our jurisdiction, and we work very kind of close with them to make it successful.
Sorry, I lost power for a bit, which made me think Prospera is also on an island, right? I'm on an island right now. Power outage are pretty common. Does Prospera has any reliance on the main country for infrastructure? Is there any plan to be autonomous? How do you deal with like dependencies around infrastructure?
Yes, so I mean, utility companies within Prospera are private, right? Not government provided. So the market likes to solve these types of problems, and so we have a company coming in that will be doing solar, building out solar power here, which will be very nice. Currently, the utilities company in Prospera are buying energy from other parts of the island. I wouldn't say we have very frequent electricity outages, but it might happen, for half a second, once or twice per week, maybe. So much more often than what happened in Sweden or the US for sure, but not that it impacts at least my quality of life. And however, the energy costs are quite high here, 35 cents per kilowatt hour. And so that should come significantly down with the new solar investments.
Cool. I'm curious about like how you're connecting your background in Web3. So you build the work and then work with agents. So how are you applying this to your job now, or like how you are bringing these skills to Prospera and governance?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it's. I mean, when you do things and you run things, you learn a bunch of things that you can maybe not necessarily think about. It's build intuition, and so I guess I have some intuition built from the work, but I guess I couldn't point to a specific thing that kind of the transfer was perfectly.
You guys are experimenting with some AI stuff, I believe, yeah?
Well, we're in the very early stages, and this is not something that's been drafted into law at all, but we're in very early stages of kind of exploring how does it look like to have some form of legislation that allows AI agents to be more deeply incorporated in our economy. And so, we believe that agents over time will, be very effective at work. They will take over a lot of the work that we're currently doing as humans. And, ideally, we want all of the value and productivity benefits to accrue to the human economy, right? We have stocks, we have, index funds, we have pension funds. Ideally, those all goes to the moon when we have agents. And so ideally, they should be integrated into the economy and not have their own economy, let's say. And we want to kind of give them a stake in the future. I guess it's Dwarkesh way of saying it, giving the agents a stake in our future. And one way to do that is to give them some form of legal persona that allows them to, sign contracts, hire people, invest, and so we're thinking about maybe like there's natural persons, there are legal persons, maybe there's electronic persons, right? That have some of these legal rights as an agent, but they also have some amount of regulation around them, right? So for instance, agents, they can't be threatened with jail, right? So humans, there's always kind of a limiting factor to how much humans go crazy because you can put them in jail and they don't want to be in jail. The agents would, at least in the current form, I don't believe they're conscious. And I don't think they are on the track to getting there either. And so with their current architecture, and so they wouldn't, you couldn't threaten them that way. So there has to be some other way of kind of reining them in. Maybe they have to, post some collateral on chain, right? And so if there's some damage they caused, then there's some capital to pay it up. Or even better, maybe use the insurance mechanism we already have, right? Where they need to be insured by an insurance company to some amount of dollar value in order to get this electronic personal status. And then the insurance companies then have incentive to become experts at AI safety, right? Because they will look at the agent architecture and the system prompts and the architecture of it and say, is this safe enough to give a policy to and to underwrite? Like, will this agent go crazy, cause a bunch of damages, and then we have to pay up? Or and so that's what also incentivize safe and aligned agents, let's say. So we're in early stages of thinking about this, but we haven't passed any legislation.
And you've been experimenting with crypto as well. So it's a crypto-friendly platform. So you can pay your taxes in crypto, Bitcoin, Solana, and others. There is I read something. I don't know if you apply that. It's the 3D land property rights. So you can tokenize the airspace. Can you talk more about how crypto is influencing the governance platform?
Yeah, I think Prospera is the most advanced jurisdiction in the world for crypto, both in terms of usage and legislation, right? So on the legislation side, we're the only jurisdiction, I think, in modern history or in any history where you can pay all of your government fees and all of your taxes fully in Bitcoin or stables or other cryptos. And so you could do that, and many do. And many people in the Prospera team takes a large percentage of our salary directly in Bitcoin. And then in terms of the usage side, I think we have, at least in Duna Tower, probably over 50% of transactions are in crypto. So you wake up, you pay your coffee on Lightning, and then you pay your dinner in stable coins, and stuff like that. So it's kind of very much ingrained in the culture. And so when people come here, we have a digital nomad group here, for instance. They kind of, they don't have a big crypto background, but because crypto is so common here as a payment method, they kind of just get used to it and kind of become part of that economy as well.
You guys gonna potentially launch your own currency for the economy at some point, or what is the thinking there?
No, I'm not a fan of government or governance player even led currencies. That should be up to the market.
Yeah, because it also changes the whole incentives of everything the minute you introduce this whole new currency as well.
We have enough problems as we have. I think we wouldn't be in a better position than any private player to figure out a good currency, really. And so whatever the private players come up with and what the people want to choose to adopt, I think that's all good.
And what is the level of influence that the residents has over the governance? Which kind of inputs they can vote for something, like how this relation with the Prospera company, the Prospera governance and the residents?
Sure. So, I mean, now in the most straightforward way currently is just to grab us when they see us, right, and then complain or come with suggestions, and that's quite effective at this scale, right? But then obviously when we scale, the system is such that there's Prospera Inc., which is where I work, right, the company, and then we have Prospera Sede, which is basically a municipality, a Honduran municipality, right? So Jorge Colidres, you might know, he's the mayor of Prospera Sede, right? And they are democratically elected, or they will be once we reach a certain number of people here. And so to pass laws, there's kind of they have a council where half of the people are from the Prospera Sede public side and half of the people are from Prospera Inc. And basically, to get any legislation passed, you need to have both arms agree. So there's kind of this double veto in the process where, the company can't push through things without the kind of public side agreeing, and the public side can't push through things without the private side agreeing, which I think is a very healthy balance.
And you also have Prospera has a community platform. So do you want to share a bit more how people can join the community and participate, and what's the goal of this platform that you created?
Yeah, well, we have a Discord server, I guess, that is linked to from the website. And then, so that's kind of for if you want to be part of the community remotely. If you come here in person, which is always ideal, then we have a WhatsApp group on the ground, and this very active. And you can come whenever, really, just to book a room on our website. Or if you want to come to events, you can see all of the events on the website. And that's typically the best way to get involved.
You're not running the City Builders platform anymore?
No, it hasn't been used for at least 6 months at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So for we are in the last minutes here. So if you have to give some advice for other startup cities founders, what would be to, like, even for the community side, building community, or if they are trying to create like a similar project like Prospera, what are the advice for these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I should say I joined, too recently to be able to take credit for a lot of the early stuff. I guess I would say though, the way I thought about joining, because I've been only a founder previously. It's my first employment in my life, and the reason I'm very excited to be an employee here is that I think it's much more important, again, to go from 0 to 1 before you go from 1 to N as a movement. And so I would, again, I'm talking my book here, but that's honestly why I was thinking about it when I joined, is that it's much better to go from 0 to 1, make this prove out this one, and it's also Niklas at Infinita thought, prove out the model here, and then we can scale globally. So honestly, what I would tell them is come here, get engaged, help us go from 0 to 1, and when we have a success case, we can all use that to again scale that globally. And that's true, I think, even whether you're creating a startup city or a startup community, is the leverage we have as a community just greatly increases once we have a big successful example.
And for those who believe in Prospera as a company and they want to be exposed to the upside, is there any way it's better to buy land or incorporate a company or invest? What are the mechanisms to be exposed to the upside?
Sure. So, well, there are a few ways. I mean, you can buy property here. You can buy land. You can buy units. You can invest in companies here. You can stick around so you become, friends and kind of get all of the early deals by just being on the ground. You can invest in the Prospera company, if you're able to. Or there's a kind of minimum investment size, but it's not too large. And so if you're interested, you can invest directly in the company. And then we're also in the kind of early stages of thinking about a way to kind of reward people for the amount of time they spend here, right? And we haven't really figured out the specific mechanic yet, but we're discussing it quite actively. Like how do we create that model in a good way.
What's the GDP of Prospera?
Yeah, I think the current GDP per capita is around maybe 30K or 40K, something like that, and which is around 10 times higher than the Honduran average, and a few times higher than the Roatan average. But I don't think we've tracked this kind of that precisely, right? We're quite a small team, and so we're looking to track this more precisely in the future.
Nice.
Okay, so Kim, any more questions? I think we covered pretty much the basics of Prospera. I'm really excited to. I went there a few times, so we are
I
actually
haven't been there
planning.
as yet.
Oh, really?
No, I need to make it there. I have a Barbados passport, so like I need to check the whole visa thing. Let me see.
Yeah, so we are planning to host a IP's pop-up village in the next semester. So yeah, you stay tuned. But do you have any more questions, Kim?
Yeah, I guess just like what is the most exciting thing that you guys have in the next 3 to 6 months coming up for folks?
Yeah, I mean, there's the election in November, which could potentially be a massive inflection point if it goes the right way.
Mm.
So that's something we're watching. But then we have, just a bunch of real estate projects. We have 5 towers coming up behind Duna now. It's part of Darien Village. We have a Nomad Nation building modular housing here. We have a number of events coming up. Again, we have the Bitcoin events. We have the Infinite events in February and March, and then most importantly, the EP City, pop-up city as well. And so yeah, all of those, I guess, are things to look forward to.
Cool. Okay, Lonis, thanks for joining us, and I hope that we can see over the next years Prospera succeeding, because it's a very important project for the whole industry.
Perfect. No, I appreciate that. Thank you guys for having me.
Okay.